going on calorie deficit diets, crash, doing everything, in a
Yeah.
very reckless way. It's in a very weird way to gain the approval of patriarchal standards, to look
Yeah.
good for men. You know how we decided that the first season's gonna be about physical wellness? Do
Mhm.
you want to tell our listeners as to why we chose physical wellness over emotional or any other sort of topic that we could have possibly chosen?
Mm, I think one thing I would say is all of us are talking about mental health, right? About how we have to change our mental health and or psych and all of that. But I think it starts with understanding what our body is and how it's kind of, related to our mind and related to our mindset and things like that, right? It all starts with our body because the minute we feel stressed, we get a headache or our hormones change and things like that. So we need to, I think that's where it started, that we started focusing on our physical well-being.
So why do you think you know how we're born with this body and we just have to listen to it, right? It's a very simple mechanism. If I'm hungry, I go eat. If I'm thirsty, I go drink water. So why is it that it's become more and more difficult for women to pay attention to these cues? Why do you think this is especially happening to women?
Hmm. I think one example I can think of is that when I was having severe period cramps, and to everyone would tell me that it's normal, right? It's normal to have period
Mm.
cramps because you're a girl, and it's normal to feel fatigue because you're a girl. Because I think the fact that they are normalizing all of this, and we've come to terms with it that, okay, as a woman, I'm supposed to have these pain, I'm supposed to have these things. I think that's where it all started, I feel. Don't you think?
I agree, but then don't you also think, we know very few women who actually don't experience pain. For instance, this is something that this is a conversation I've had with people where we've spoken about like the first time we had our periods, and most of us were, able to talk about how we didn't feel any pain on the first, like for the first time, right? But then, there was a lot of expectation around us in terms of, oh, you don't feel anything, you don't feel pain, and then the second time, it was just the most horrible pain ever. And then it's just on and off and on and off. So what you see is periods by themselves, because, technically the biology of it is it's just contracting muscles, right?
Hmm.
But then the experience, the psychological experience of it is a very different story. So how do we actually connect our everyday habits with the way that our body responds? This is also something that I read somewhere where it said, your monthly cycle, like the time when you have your periods, is like a monthly report card for how you treat your body.
Hmm.
So how is it that you think we're supposed to treat our body?
I think it's very funny because I think when you said about the report card, right? I still
Yeah.
remember the times when I was trying to handle my pain, because back in Christ, when I was studying, I used to have severe pains. I don't have that pain now. I have much lesser pain now, but it's on and off. Like I said, like last month I went on a trek. I was on a trek and I didn't have any pain. But this month I was at home. I didn't do anything, but I got severe pain. It was very bad, right? So it all connected to when I was in Christ. I used to do things like how I'm eating, how much water I'm drinking, whether I'm doing any physical activity or not. That kind of denoted how my pain would be. So I used to monitor this so that I will know by the end of that month I will not have pain if I've acted a certain way. Because when you said about the report card, it typically that's how it feels. Okay, this month you are a good girl, you are like really taking care of yourself. Okay, I'll be nice.
This kind of also overlaps into this concept of how women whine a lot, right?
Hmm.
So, one thing that you see is as much as our bodies are complex, our experience in life is also complex. So, hormones, when you look at it, it's very different for men and women. And so it's not really relatable for half of the human population to relate to the other half of the human population. So when we talk about how stress matters to us because it impacts us very directly, this is not something that they can like at first glance understand. And so one thing that you see in terms of patriarchy, the world that we built, right, it's very patriarchal, meaning it's very related to men's preferences. So
Yeah, the
how do you
system
think?
kinda is made for them.
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. So how do you think we women who are in a patriarchal system can figure out our needs while surviving? Because if you look at our jobs, it's 9 to 5. And if you look at like the way that we're expected to function, we don't really like, it's not normal for us to get menstrual days, or it's not normal for us to kind of track our cycles. It's still so much, of a taboo, right? So how do you think we can listen to our bodies when the world literally stops us from doing just that?
I think one first thing we have to start is by taking care of the things that we eat, right? Our diet. I think it has to be something different because we have been told as a woman, like last episode we spoke about exercising and strengthening. Like the thing is we cannot function like a male. The kind of food they eat, the kind of things they consume is not the same for a woman. Women need a different sort of fueling altogether, and I think that is something that we really want to take it across to our listeners today is this fueling has to be made for women, and it has to be in such a way that certain things, that how we feed ourselves, how we fuel ourselves also matters. Do you see that?
Hmm. Do you actually practice cycle syncing in terms of your eating habits? Because that's what you're talking about, right?
Sort of a
And it's a
cycle
popular
sync.
concept now.
Yeah,
Huh.
cycle, that's something I'm trying. I wouldn't say that I've really excelled at. One thing I do is I see my how my energy level changes, right? So it's basic concept. What I've understood is the energy level is like peak around the first to ovulation and the first after the menstrual cycle, and then it kind
The
of dips
follicular
as
phase.
it dips close to our menstrual cycle, right?
Yeah.
So so what I do is in terms of my heavy exercises I put during those high energy period, and during the low energy period something like yoga, like exercises, home exercises, sort of like that. In the same way, even eating that reverses. So when the energy level is low, I eat more energy related food like dates and bananas. And on the other hand, when I'm at high energy, I use like regular foods. So
So energy levels would mean more uh, carbohydrate dense, and then or proteins. I don't speak this language. Explain to me.
so I think what I really want people to know is do not come with the conceptions, right? The preconception that carbs are bad, fat is bad, or proteins are bad. It all comes down to few things, which is uh, your lifestyle, the things you want to do. For example, if I'm a woman who I have, say, I have two children and I'm also working, I go to the office and I do minimal home housework. Say I don't have that much of a housework responsibility. I have a maid. So say this is my lifestyle, and how do I keep my energy level up is by one, I will regulate the amount of food that I'm eating in terms of how much of vitamins I'm getting or how much of protein I'm getting. Because say if I have two kids, I'm by the age of 35, 40, my muscles will start to weaken and I need to get stronger in terms of my muscle. So I'll probably go say gym 3 to 4 times a week, do some strength training. Along with that, I'll do a protein related diet. So that's something that I will do. So of course, I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not talking from that angle. And if you want that in-depth level of analysis, you can of course go to a nutritionist. But basic idea is it depends on your lifestyle, it depends on the energy is being sucked out of you, right? If you have two kids and a family and a job sucking your energy out, you need to plan your fuel based on that. Otherwise it's going to drain you physically, and that physically, because you're also putting mental efforts to it, that is also draining. So you need a bit of a balance in terms of the carbs and the fat and the protein. So yeah, it all comes down to that, isn't it?
I completely agree. this thing of energy that you speak of, right? When we consider complex conditions, like say any autoimmune condition, like your anything that affects the vital functions. For instance, I have hypothyroidism, right? So when you look at the condition itself, it is something that affects metabolism, right? So one thing is this is it's very interesting because it's your immune system attacking your own cells, and so this is it doesn't really have like an external cause. So if you look at the nature of symptoms that come with this, right, it's lack of energy. Like that's the first thing that you would ask a person if you're suspecting hypothyroidism, where you say how is your energy levels? You do you feel sleepy? And this is again one thing that I'll ask you when you talk about energy levels, how do you think we manage energies when we're eating, but it's not really reflecting in the way that we feel? Because that's something, I mean, like I said, right, it's autoimmune, which means it's nothing to do with my body itself, it's something to do with stress.
Hmm.
So in this case, doesn't it complicate it more? And if you talk about women specifically here, women are constantly stressed about one thing or the other. Like you said, right? When you gave the example of a mother who has two children and then she has a job and then she has like relationships to manage, I cannot actually imagine her going to work, I mean, going to the gym 4 times a week. That seems like a very, I mean, very unlikely scenario, right? Because why would she? She's so stressed, she's barely gonna have time for herself. So, how do you think energy levels can be protected here? Because again, like I said, there's the patriarchal structure, then there is like the demands that you have in terms of what you want as well, like children that I want, family that I want. So these are things that I want to pursue. And then like you said, I'm following a diet, I'm trying to go to the gym, but then I don't feel energetic, I don't feel that muscle recovery, I don't feel that muscle gaining strength. I feel just overall just shitty.
Hmm.
So, like, how am I supposed to feel motivated to kind of keep doing this? How do I kind of switch it up? Because again, this is something that is related to stress again, right? If you're feeling extremely stressed, your body is in that survival mode, the fight or flight response, that your body is actually not gonna do the things that is gonna be aesthetically good for you, like gain muscle and things. It's just gonna hold on to your dear life.
Hmm.
So, do you want to talk a little bit about how complex this connection is with lifestyle choices?
I think you kind of it reminds me of this one woman who, remember the last interview I was talking about, a woman
Yeah.
who she came, she was like telling me that I actually eat healthy, I eat everything in very small quantities. She was dieting, so the thing is she was doing everything right by the book. She
Yeah.
was like working out, she was eating right, yet she didn't see any effects in her body. Like in the same way, like you're saying, we as a women have a lot of problems. And so i
Yeah,
i
we
know
do.
i know we have a lot of problems, okay, even if whether we are
We're
younger,
constantly whining, Anne.
whether we are young or whether we are old, whether we have children or whether we are, in our old age, we have problems. That's something that's there. But one thing as a woman we have been told to do is that even when we are eating, right, we are doing all of these things by the book. But every time we diet, we call ourselves, you're not good enough, you have to eat this food, you have to diet, you have to eat healthy because you need to have child, or you have to do all of this. It sort of goes in a very toxic environment we ourselves make for us, and that's the kind of food that goes into our body, which is that we give this toxic information to ourselves. So it basically means that we all of this is fruitless. Like you said, we are just surviving because our body is trying to protect in a, this survival mechanism. It cannot do anything more than that, because the first level of relationship we have with our body is so unkind, you know
That's very heavy, right? Where I'm just like every single day just trying to survive. Like, let me survive. Please just let me survive. How do you think we get out of this? How do you think it's possible, firstly? Like, that's the first question, right? Do you think it's possible to get out of the survival mode? And if yes,
Do you
how do we
remember
do it?
the rabbit study you said? Do you wanna
Yeah.
like tell me about the rabbit study, because I think it's kind of relates to what we are talking about.
Yeah, yeah. So it's called the rabbit effect, where they did this study. It was actually a very systematically flawed study because they were trying to understand the ill effects of cholesterol on already unhealthy at risk rabbits, right? So these rabbits did not have the greatest genes, and then they were supposed to be feeding it like just junk food. So they were expecting that these rabbits would die much younger than they anticipated. But what happened was it didn't really go that way. The hypothesis wasn't, it was skewed, right? And when they were trying to understand how this happened, because like junk food is bad, right? How did these rabbits end up getting better? Like their health was much better than, when they started off. So when they tried to kind of look at what were the qualitative differences, they found that the postgrad student who was feeding the rabbits, right?
Hmm.
She was apparently petting the rabbits and
Oh.
yeah, very very you coded. Like this is so you. She was like being very cute. She There was a lot of love language sharing that was happening, and that is something that they are assuming translated into their health outcomes. So what they're saying is if you feel loved when you're eating, whatever, like this is a little dramatic to say, maybe a little far-fetched, but poison turns to medicine when you're loved, which is
Oh.
interesting.
And I think
So,
that even with our mothers cooking, right? Like if
yeah.
they, you say that at home when you eat, when you do it with love, the food turns to be really tasty and also healthy. It's because you do it with an intention that I'm going to feed my family, I'm going to cook for my children, they are going to be healthy, they really want to be growing, and that good things are being translated, I feel.
Again, coming back to the question that we started with, why do women have diseases? Does that mean mothers are not loving their children? Also, why is it that it's the mom's responsibility to do all the loving? Who loves the mom?
Hmm. I don't know. We've been given oxytocin, We start feeling love the minute the baby comes out, and we feel all that cuddly
But
bubbly.
men feel that as well. Men get oxytocin as well. But then, the expectation's always on a woman to love. But then the question is, how can a woman feel loved when she's nourishing herself? Because women eat a lot of things. Women eat healthy stuff, women eat unhealthy stuff. But when they're eating it, how many women can actually say, I feel loved, I feel nourished? Like I'm doing this because I want to live for the people that I want to sustain my life. I'm fueling for love.
But the thing is, I agree. It is sort of like a patriarchal system. It's years and years of things that's been told to us that selflessness is a womanly quality, and we are motherly, we are nurturing, and we are all the nice things. So I
Uh,
think it's very inherently it is inside us that we kind of have been made to believe that we are the only nurturers in this
But I
world.
feel like that's not inherent, that's social conditioning. Because I used to believe that. I used to believe because I'm a woman, I'm very motherly by nature. And that's not true. I think, like, because every time I didn't want to be motherly, I felt guilty, and that guilt would drive me to be motherly more. It was
I have
never
a
because
doubt.
it was,
So,
yeah.
if we are saying we are nurturers, what's the difference between love and nurturing?
Mm, Nurturing is a much more wholesome word because love has been abused quite a bit. Love, I think I associate it with more with like uh, passion, while nurturing I associate it with a much more wholesome sort of a thing. I associate nurturing with taking responsibility for someone else, caring for that person, basically, making sure that the other person's well-being is taken care of, right? When you say love, I can say I love someone and I can like forget about them. But then I have a lot of feelings that I associate with that person. So
But you
love,
don't
I
show it
think,
in actions.
yeah, yeah. I think love for word itself, we associate the word with like the feeling and not the action.
But where I'm getting with this question is,
Yeah.
inherently every human being is capable of loving and nurturing. That's something that, I don't know, unlike the environment conditions us, it has to be within us, right? So
Hmm.
now that makes me think the question you asked earlier, why only mothers are supposed to be loving and nurturing when any human being can be, right? So
Yeah.
it makes me question, like, why did that responsibility fall on us? Because a man as a father can also be nurturing and loving and,
Yeah.
giving and selfless and all of that.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of women struggle with self-love because like they constantly talk, at least the women that I know, right? Whenever they talk about how they struggle with self-love, you can always associate it or see there's like a past pattern where they were not loved by the men in their lives early on in life. And so what you see is there's a lot of like selflessness that becomes their personality, where they believe that only when they're empty they are living right. So
Mm.
I think this is something that women need to think about, because even this thing of looking skinny, looking aesthetically pleasing, and so going on calorie deficit diets, crash, doing everything in a
Yeah.
very reckless way. It's in a very weird way to gain the approval of patriarchal standards, to look
Yeah.
good for men, right? So I can't believe we got here from there. But yeah, it is what it is.
Selfish means, really,
On the
it's about
next
taking care
episode
of
of
yourself,
Sugar,
standing
Spice,
up for
and
your
Everything
choices,
Chaos.
loving yourself. It's not a bad word. Selfish is not a bad word.